yes, I like very much what Florida Marquis talks about. I have mirrored a little bit of his work before, and I don't think he'll mind me doing this. I will send him a copy of this, but after this, he gets into diet. And one thing he's noticed is that, you know, the people there are a bit more elderly, so maybe retired, less stressed, and then he gets on to diet. But I was wondering back to this picture when he's showing us this, because he does draw out the fact that it's very strange, this person looking like a native with a crown, has green, or has shoes on. But maybe this picture's about abundance. You've got peace, trees, water, although the ship doesn't look very big in the picture, considering he's here. You can see the tree, the ship is very small, but maybe all this means abundance. That's what here meant. Or when it was bigger, because I showed a picture on a map on one of the videos the other day that obviously this was much bigger, and then in this, you know, it didn't look like that. But maybe this is about abundance. But I liked what he was saying, because this is an old emblem and no one talks about what they're looking at. They just accept and don't question what this all means.
There's something very, very strange going on with the state seal of Florida. And when you add in some little known historical facts, it makes the image even stranger. In today's video, I would like to cover some of those facts and attempt to get to the bottom of this, because I've looked at state seals from all over the country, and they are almost all very, very representative of the state. You don't see things in the imagery that argue with what the state is. For example, you don't see pictures of cactuses on the state seal of Michigan. You don't see pictures of deserts on the state seal of New York. But on the state seal of Florida, you see mountains. And more importantly, you see the sun either rising or setting over those mountains. Now, Florida didn't become a state until March 3rd, 1845. Florida wasn't a state, wasn't even part of the Revolution. It was only 15 years before the War of Federal Aggression that Florida became a state, and even at that, the vast majority of the southern part of the state was wild. It was total wilderness and swamp. Everything north of, everything south of Orlando was pretty much uninhabitable, so the only imagery they would have used would have been from somewhere in the north. Now, when we look closely here on the right, we see an image of a Native American standing on the bank of a river. In that river is a steam-powered paddle boat. On the far bank is a king palm. In the distance is mountains, with the sun either going down or coming up. I personally believe it's the sun coming up, it's the sun rising, because there's only one river in northern Florida that would have been large enough to be traveled by these types of steam-powered paddle wheels. And that river is the St. Johns. It's in extreme northeast Florida. Mayport Naval Base is up here, Jacksonville. And it's still a very, very busy port. As you can see, the river gets very, very wide. Almost looks like, at some points, looks like a giant bay. Especially when you get down towards Green Cove Springs. There is a very secretive but very strategic submarine base, believe it or not, years ago, very near Green Cove Springs. So it's my opinion, just based on observation, that this is a picture of a Native American somewhere on the western bank of the St. Johns River, looking eastward at a rising sun. It's the over the mountains part that is very, very strange. I'm not sure why they would have added that in. Looking eastward, there's nothing even remotely like it. And there are rivers, there's intracoastal waterways all over Florida, and way over here in the Panhandle, for a very short time, it looks like the Chattahoochee comes into Florida. But, you know, and then if it's over here, then you could be looking either direction, but the closest to Florida you can find mountains isn't east or west, it's north. Which then begs the question, where was this idea gotten from? One of the more odd things is that there are mountains in Cuba, there are mountains in Dominican, there are mountains in Puerto Rico, there are mountains all over the Caribbean. Why are there none in Florida? It really makes you wonder sometimes about history and where Native Americans from this era would have gotten this idea. It was the big draw to Florida, by the way, the St. Johns River, because that was really the only way at that time you could make it into the interior. There were Spanish explorers hundreds of years before that had gone back and reported to the king of Spain that Florida was largely uninhabitable, unsettleable. It would never be any kind of an asset. I believe that might have been DeSoto. That's the contempt they had for this part of North America. And that's what they thought of it. So a very, very strange anomaly that they would create this. And the image used for the Native American in the foreground is very, very light-skinned. And it wasn't an ink issue, because you can see they have the darker tones that they use for the, well, I guess for the trim, and then also for the palm tree and for the boat. The shoes are also almost teal. I've never seen teal sandals everywhere. Anyway, I mean, I'm sure in some store now you could find them, but at that time, very, very odd imagery that was used. Because this is such a small detail on the seal of a state. Unless it was something that was just accurate for the period, I'm not sure why you would use it.
So I went myself to look up to see if Florida had any mountains, and there's Sugarloaf Mountain, but it's not got a range on it, but it does have water the other side, and I thought, oh, maybe that's it, but no. So I have to go and look things up, and then this on the way to finding that, well, whatever you want to call it, but anyway, that was a bit interesting, I suppose. You've all got nicknames for the state. There they are. Anyway, I came across these are seals, with some very interesting pictures on them as well, but what do all those mean, and the stories and the history behind them? But that is your seal. This is the American seal. Yeah, the White House one. That's what's used on your seal. That's just a painting of it. Now, I did come across that one. And then I started to see, yes, it's got that red crisscross on it. Anyway, started to find more pictures. The thing that is the most common is the boat, the tree, and In God We Trust. other than that, the scenery changes and so does the person. And whether there's like mountains and things in it. And one of the pictures has 2 boats on it, so it changes all the time. As have the sun in it. These are all seals that obviously have been used, but they are all different. Some have got mountains in, some have got 2 boats in them, some don't have mountains in them, and they change a bit, quite a bit, sometimes. And then after getting here to the next bit, wasn't really much information. Here we go. Looking at this, yep, the seal. That's it. No more. Only that this seal has been used at some point, and that's about it. It says 20th century. Not very much information. Anyway, there it is. It was used. It was adopted in 1985, but it's from 1876. But anyway, it says here there have been several changes have occurred. The Indian woman no longer has a feathered headdress, and there's no mountains in the background have been flattened. I wonder what that means. The mountains in the background have been flattened. But Florida has no mountains. The steamboat has been prepared a few times, and a sable palm has been transplanted in place of the original cocoa tree to reflect the state's adoption of the sable palmetto palm as the official state tree in 1953. So that's the reason that the tree's there. Last revised in 1985. Well, there's a little bit more history on it, but I wonder what the real history is then, because why would they put mountains in there? What, was Florida saying, I want mountains? Yeah, they're obviously reflecting something else, aren't they? What's your thoughts on it? Just asking. Several changes have occurred. The Indian woman no longer has a feathered headdress. A mountain in the background has been flattened. Florida has no mountains. A mountain in the background has been flattened. Florida has no mountains. Doesn't really explain that much, does it? Anyway, I wonder what it all means, what it really means then. I'd like to know too.